Hello everyone. Today's story begins with a conflict at a family gathering. Jacob reveals his mother Grace's prejudice against werewolves in front of everyone, causing family tensions to rise. At the same time, Jacob's supernatural powers begin to awaken. Can he balance family conflicts with his newly discovered divine powers? What's more interesting is that Hunter and Jacob's relationship deepens throughout this process. How will they face pressures from society and family? Chapter 54. Jacob's conflicted emotions were palpable as he chewed his bottom lip, his hands fidgeting in his lap. The weight of the situation bore down on him, and he began to question his approach. Hunter's reassuring thoughts echoed in his mind. Your just testing her. You need to see what you're dealing with. It's not like you're going to announce it in front of everyone. You're only going to question her in front of William and Scott. Torn between his desire for truth and the potential consequences, Jacob's eyes darted between his parents. The love between William and Grace was evident, and he feared the impact his actions might have on their relationship. Hunter's voice resonated in his head once more. Just do what feels right. Or don't do anything and let Grace sort this out. It's her mess, not yours. Jacob's gaze found Hunter standing with his pack near the fire, the flames dancing in his glossy eyes. The alpha's gentle expression provided a momentary comfort amidst the turmoil. Suddenly, a new voice invaded Jacob's thoughts, causing him to choke on his drink. William, ever attentive, patted his back concernedly. Are you all right? Heart racing, Jacob recognized the voice and looked over to Sam. Catching his quick grin, we're officially best friends. Sam's vibrant voice echoed in his mind. Welcome to my head, Jacob. I can only apologize. It's a bit messy in here. It's fine. Jacob smiled, grateful for the distraction. Mine too. Hunter's authoritative voice cut through their mental exchange. Sam, get out of his head. Jacob turned to his mate, rolling his eyes at Hunter's jealous reaction. Sam froze instantly, not wanting to upset his alpha. You're really strict with him, Jacob mumbled, feeling a twinge of sympathy for Sam. Hunter's response was firm. His alpha, and he's used to it. I am. Sam's voice chimed in agreement. Sam. Hunter's stern reprimand silenced the playful wolf, leaving Jacob to ponder the complexities of pack dynamics and his own place within this intricate web of relationships. The beta wolf switched off his mind link and turned to talk to Flora. You're so possessive, Jacob thought, but deep down, he secretly liked how protective Hunter was. It made him feel special. I'm pretty sure we had this conversation when we first connected. I'm an alpha. I get jealous and dominant over my territory. For the first time, Jacob allowed his eyes to flicker down Hunter's body, and Hunter's eyes hopped out of his head. His mate just checked him out, in public and without an ounce of his timid behavior. If I'm making out with you right here. Jacob dug his hands into his pockets and looked down to the grass with a little smile. But just like that, he was shy once more. He had little bursts of being confident, and he really wished it would stay longer than a few minutes. He overthinks things constantly, and it's hard for him to be himself around a lot of judging eyes. Of course, nobody is judging him, yet it's incredibly easy for him to convince himself otherwise. Hello, a deep voice boomed, making him quickly look up to see Nathan standing in front of him. His eyes diverted back to the ground and his hands made their way out of his pockets. Nathan watched how he almost instantly began to fidget. You're Jacob. Right. He nodded. This was an odd situation. He was pretending like he didn't know who Nathan was. Nathan was doing the same about him. Well, Nathan. It's nice to meet you. Jacob was just about to say something when his brother stepped in, seeing how he was a little tense and awkward. Hi, 𝐿𝐤. Hello. Nathan smiled warmly. He has waited for years to speak to his nephews. Are you both friends of Hunter's? I am. But he's Jacob's boyfriend. Jacob felt all tingly from hearing that. It was still a little odd to think that he has, in fact, got someone special in his life when he never thought it would happen. Especially with someone like Hunter. Remember, We're both good enough for each other. Hunter's voice filled his head. Jacob saw him watching him out of the corner of his eye. He took a breath and focused on Nathan. Did you meet through their relationship? He asked William. No, actually. We're on the same course at college. What is it that you're studying? As they continued to talk, Jacob's eyes wandered over to his mother, who was watching him with a very intense stare. He contemplated walking over and asking why she was looking at him like that. But before he had a chance, thunder crackled in the sky. It was so loud that it covered any conversations and made everyone jump. Jacob looked up when he felt the lightning coming for him. He was sure why it would come now. He already developed another power today. You're starting to feel overwhelmed, Jacob. It said in the letter that the storm is your comfort. Hunter made his way over. I hope it doesn't rain. Kayla's voice was covered by another huge roar of thunder as Hunter took hold of his mate's hand. This situation, Jacob said. It's too much. Hunter then understood that inviting Nathan was a bad idea. Jacob couldn't cope with the pressure of pretending like he didn't know what was going on. All right. Let's go inside. No. Jacob shook his head. I can't do this. He looked at Nathan, who seemed concerned. I know who you are. I know my mom's secret. Grace immediately stood up with wide eyes. William had heard, but Scott was too far away. What did you just say? She asked. I know about. Now you have no idea what you're talking about. She interrupted in a desperate attempt to bury her secret. You're struggling today. I knew it. She grabbed his wrist and pulled him towards the car. We are going home where you belong. No, Jacob frowned and pulled his arm out of her grip. Don't cover this up by using me. I'm not covering anything up, she said through gritted teeth. Now come home with me. Now what's going on? William questioned. Everyone had stopped to watch what was happening. Nothing, Gray said quickly. Jacob just needs to be home. Jacob crossed his arms. I can't believe you're putting the attention on me so you can cover up your secret. You're the adult here. Jacob, shut your mouth. We'll talk when we're home, she hissed. Now get in the car. Nathan shook his head. He could not believe what his sister had become. You need to talk to Dad and William, Jacob said quietly. I don't want to embarrass you. Just take us into the house and tell us about what you know. Grace's eyes dotted around the people. She wanted her brother to tell Jacob, and only Jacob, who he was. She didn't think it would backfire like this. They cannot know about this. Why not? Jacob whispered. Just talk to us. I'm sick of the secrecy. Grace didn't want her husband to know. She couldn't face the shame, so she did something that would take the focus off of her secret and land on something else. She lifted her hand and smacked her son hard across the cheek. Jacob stumbled back and fell into Nathan. The echo of the slap was heard around the field. The silence was visible, as were the gasps that came after it. Grace was fighting back tears. She couldn't believe she just hit her child, but this would be forgiven. Her secret might not be. Jacob was so shocked that he allowed Nathan to hold on to him as he brushed his fingers over his stinging cheek. Never in his life has his mother been physically violent towards him. Mom, William breathed, unable to move. Scott then marched over. Anger was oozing out of him. What the hell have you done? He growled at her and pulled his son into him. He examined his face and checked that he was okay. But Jacob was quite the opposite. His mom slapped him because she thought he'd run and cry so she didn't have to announce her secret. This has made him determined to now let everyone know about it. Tell him, he said with sorrow in his tone. Or I will. Tell me what. Hunter could feel that his mate was on the verge of breaking down, but he was masking it very well. I have nothing to say. Grace felt like the world's worst mother. Why did she hit her son? Jacob turned to his dad and wondered if this was the last time his parents would be together. Yes, they love each other, but sometimes there are things that ruin without the love ever altering. She knows everything. She knew about the werewolves before I was even born because of Nathan. Jacob looked at him. He is her brother. She believed about the prophecy when Granddad told her because she knew werewolves existed. She's angry at you for calling me 𝐊𝐤𝐧𝐶 when she knew who I was all along. Hunter's pack were hearing this for the first time, but they stayed quiet because it was the respectful thing to do. Scott stared into his son's eyes. They were submerged in too much emotion, and he knew he had fought to keep this hidden. The thing that stuck out for him the most was that she just smacked her own son so she could keep this a secret. He couldn't begin to understand the trauma in her troubled mind. Why? He cleared his throat and took a breath. Why did she keep you hidden? He looked at Nathan and suddenly realized why he seemed familiar. He had the same facial features as his wife. She doesn't like werewolves. Nathan wanted to say so much more, but he was sure that he could talk to Scott when this has settled. He seemed like a very level-headed guy. Scott's eyes turned to face the one that he loved. Lately these days, he has really questioned his feelings. It felt like they were growing apart, and this just proved it. You don't like werewolves? He questioned. Jacob felt him grip onto him harder. But you know what your son is. How could you just ignore that? I don't like who he is. I know he can't help any of it, but it breaks my heart to think that he's one of the unnatural. Unnatural. Hunter frowned. We've been around for almost as long as humans. How dare you? Anthony stepped forwards and placed a hand on his son's shoulder, silencing him. This argument was for the Jones family. They could interrupt if it got out of hand. You turn into wolves. Of course. That's not natural. You live in secret so you know it yourselves. They live in secret because there are humans like you in the world. Scott sighed sadly. How can we be so similar but have such different views? If I knew you thought this way, I would never have married you. The hairs on William's neck stood on end. His heart was breaking and he could do nothing about it. I never rejected Jacob, but you have. Scott interrupted. You babied him and tried so hard to separate him from Hunter when you knew fine well that they were bonded for life. You ignored his fate and tried to make him think less of himself because you knew if he had no confidence then he would struggle with the power of being who he really is. Hunter could see it now. Grace stripped her son of his independence and created a vulnerable and unstable version of him. She knew when he was older that he would be an incredible role model for many werewolves, so she peeled away the ability to have pride in self-love. All those times you put him down because he was too unstable. Scott's eyes grew very unfriendly. It was because you wanted him broken, didn't you? A tear fell down Grace's cheek, ruining her pristine makeup. I'm so sorry. Jacob's heart felt like it had been thrown a million miles. She didn't deny it. He is the way he is because of her. He has trust issues because of her, and he hates himself because of her. What a pathetic excuse for a mother. How could you? Scott whispered. He's our son. He sounded very emotional as William stood next to his brother and took his hand. They squeezed each other for support because no matter what, they will always stick together. But he deserves a normal life, Grace. Argo's voice didn't sound angelic and calm. She sounded stern and full of hatred. She couldn't understand how any mother could do such a harmful thing. After slapping Jacob, she could barely look at her. Get off our property. Grace's vision grew blurry from the tears. She was hurting, but she deserved to be feeling this way. What she has done to Jacob over the years was silent abuse. He never felt good enough because she would let him believe it. She knew it was wrong, and one day, karma would find her. And now it hasn't hit her hard. She was going to lose her perfect little family, and it was nobody else's fault but her own. Chapter 55. Grace turned to walk away, but stopped. Could she really leave things this shattered? She turned to face the son 𝐊𝐢 and stared into his pained eyes. She then looked at William and wondered if Jacob would have been like him. Bubbly, chatty, and not afraid to be himself. Maybe he would have been a flirt. Maybe he would have been extremely talkative or loved to make friends and be social. She took that opportunity away from him. Maybe nobody will see who he truly is because it's so deeply buried with all the stress and the anxiety. I just want you to know that I don't care. Jacob felt a little numb. Just leave. He turned and walked past Nathan and Kayla. He avoided every 𝐿𝐻𝐼𝐻 and took Hunter's hand. He didn't look up. He kept going and his maid happily followed. Everyone watched them climb up the broken steps and into the house. A low grumble of thunder was present in the sky as Grace sniffed back her shame, embarrassment and guilt before turning to leave. It was clear that whatever she said would not be heard until the atmosphere was calm once more. When Jacob grew closer to the bedroom, Hunter turned him around. "It's not just your mom's fault. I'm to blame too. I was the one who made you think that you were going crazy for a year. She has done that to me all my life though, Hunter," Jacob said quietly. "She used to yell at me and tell me I was annoying for being too loud when I was little, even if I was trying to be quiet. She said people got sick of hearing my voice and that I should be seen, not heard." Hunter felt his grip loosen on his hand. "Yes, you didn't help and maybe made me worse, but it was my mom who told me I was strong enough to cope and that people didn't want to be friends with someone like me. She knew exactly what she was doing and that was to break me, so I was fit to be a god." Grace used to yell at him when he became too boisterous and made him feel unwanted. Then later on in the day, she would shower him with love so he didn't see it as abuse. He thought she just snapped for being stressed, therefore he would do all he could to please her, and if that meant growing shy and quiet, then so be it. She used to tell him that he could never go around to friends' houses or play with them on the street. She would tell him that they said mean things behind his back, and she would hug him and tell him that he was perfect. But of course, that's when the trust issues started. She told him that he cannot trust anyone because he would never be good enough in other people's eyes. He was little when this all started and the memories were gone, but the effects of her words would always be visible. She never loved him enough to let him grow and be himself. She was too worried about wanting a perfect family and one that was involved with werewolves. That is why she abandoned her brother. She was ashamed because it was normal. It was up to her standards of perfect living. "What you did to me was cruel," Jacob whispered. "But I forgive you. You were only scared and I know how bad you feel. Mom did it for years and years without a second thought. That's what hurts the most. I feel like I've seen more of the real you within this past week than what I did in a whole year because you're away from her bullying. My pack really look up to you. Jonah wouldn't stop talking about your electricity, and you should have seen the excitement on Ricky's face when the thunder hit. You're going to be a huge role model to so many werewolves. You're meant to be in this world. Your mom failed at ruining you, Jacob. You're proving it by how well you're handing the power." Jacob ran a hand through his hair and took a big breath. He didn't want to cave in and break down, but he was finding it very hard to keep back. "Come on." Hunter could feel his stress and pulled him into the bedroom. He shut the door, leaving the tense atmosphere outside. Jacob sat on the end of his bed and dropped his head in his hands. He felt too many mixed emotions. He felt bad for his mom but hated what she had done. He felt sorrow for his dad and his brother because their relationship won't be the same with her ever again. Just then, he felt warm fur brush against his legs. He quickly moved his hands to see Hunter and his wolf from rubbing himself against him. "Change into your wolf," he thought in his head. Jacob sighed and sat knowing that if he didn't change on the bed, his pup from wouldn't be able to climb up. Hunter watched as he changed but got lost inside his T-shirt. He climbed on the bed and pulled him out of it. Jacob liked being in his wolf form, but sometimes he felt a little too small and vulnerable. Hunter curled up around him and watched him bury his little body into his fur. He started licking his head as Jacob closed his eyes. It was odd being a wolf because he felt traits that are not possessed by his godly form. He liked being stroked and licked by Hunter. If he thought that in his other form, then Hunter would probably jump on him there and then. When morning rolled around, William and Scott had slept on the couches in Margot and Anthony's home, not really wanting to face Grace. It was 8:30 in the morning when they were woken up by the sweet smell of bacon. William rolled over and very nearly fell off the couch. He quickly placed his hand on the floor, but it hit something warm instead. His tired eyes peeled open to see Sam staring up at him. It was his intentions to stay over, but he couldn't be bothered to go home. Morning. He smiled and waited patiently for William to remove his hand from his chest. Oh, he lifted it up when Sam glanced at it. Sorry. It's okay. He chuckled and slowly pulled himself up. He pushed William's legs off the couch and sat down. The floor was not as comfortable as it looked. William saw him rub his neck. But oh well. He turned and watched Anthony flip the bacon. That smells so good. William glanced at his dad, who was tiredly rubbing his eyes. He felt really bad for him. He was so depressed last night that he didn't talk to anyone about what happened. He completely changed the subject. But that is how Scott coped. Nathan and Kayla went home. It didn't feel right being there after an argument, but they were coming back today when things were a little less tense. "Do you want to see if your brother and Hunter are awake?" Sam asked and jumped off the couch. After he woke in the morning, he was automatically full of energy. "But we're not allowed in their room. We can open Hunter's door, but we can't enter." William watched him walk over and decided to follow. He had a bit of a headache from the broken sleep, but it felt good to be up early on a weekend for a change. Sam slowly pushed the door open to see Hunter and Jacob still in their wolf form. Hunter was sprawled out across the bed with Jacob snugged and his head pressed against his chin. He looked very small against the big wolf. Why is Jacob a puppy?" William questioned. "I don't know." Sam shrugged. "But I think it suits him. And I think purple suits Hunter too. I love how they have matching marks. They are my relationship goals." "What are your relationship goals?" "I hardly think it's Alicia unless you like being threatened, and every day of your life." Sam's mind was scattered in the morning. It took him an hour or two to stop the words from just flowing out of his mouth. "I want a mate." William shook his head with a smile. He barely had time to process what Sam was talking about. "When do you find yours?" "I don't know. It could be in 2 months. It could be in 20 years. Or I might never find one. Sometimes I think it's unfair, but if I don't get one, I haven't earned it. I'd like to know what I need to do to earn one that doesn't come with a textbook like Jacob's powers." "Unfortunately, I could, Sam," Hunter grumbled. They both looked up to see him in his human form, cuddling the little pup. "Shut up." Sam pursed his lips and quickly shut the door. He nervously laughed it off before walking over to Anthony. He picked up some bacon and watched the birds land on the field through the window. His wolf traits really like chasing birds. "Sure, Sam. Help yourself." Anthony Stone was sarcastic as he gently nudged him out of his way. They have known him for many years and were very happy when Hunter chose him to be his beta wolf. He was incredibly loyal, fun, hard-working, and not afraid to protect his alpha in any situation. He felt like part of the family and they wouldn't have it any other way. "William, go give this coffee to your dad." Margot beamed and handed it to him. "Would you like one?" "I'm okay, thank you." Scott had just managed to sit up when a big cup was first into his hands. William sat next to him and watched him closely. "Are you okay, Dad?" Scott turned and decided whether he should put on a brave face or not. This was his child and he needed to be there for him, not the other way around. "I am, yes. I feel better after sleeping. How are you this morning?" He patted his son's knee and sipped the coffee and hoped it would wake him up a bit more. "I'm okay, do I guess. Do you think we'll see Mom today?" "I don't know. I think it's best to meet Nathan properly so we know his side of the story first." He rubbed his temples and sat against the cushions. "I can't believe she has a brother. I can't believe I have an uncle. Does he have any kids?" Flora interrupted and slowly sat on the opposite couch. "But he is the alpha of the rival pack that had Alicia as the beta wolf." "What?" William frowned. "Really?" "Yes, but he has apologized to Hunter, and most of what Alicia did was not ordered by her alpha." Margot sat down next to her mother. "He is going to try and build a friendship with Vic." "Hopefully," Anthony mumbled. "That kid has always been jealous of him. Well, he can grow up. No boy will cause my grandson any trouble," Flora said proudly. She then turned to Anthony with a questioning frown. "Are you announcing their relationship at the city meeting today?" "I am." He crossed his arms and curled his eyebrows into a frown. "I also have to announce the 𝐊𝐢𝐬𝐧𝐰, which means bringing him with me so he can show his power. Otherwise, people will think him mad. He should be okay if Hunter is with him." Scott added, "I've seen small bursts of confidence within him when they are together." "Me too." Margot smiled and crossed her legs. She was going to do her morning yoga soon and was planning on forcing Jacob into joining her. It was a calming morning ritual and he might enjoy the peaceful hour outside to do nothing other than think to himself and ease his tense body. He has a beautiful soul and I'm more than sure everyone will see it too. And if they don't? Scott asked. Scott, Jacob may not be aware of this yet, but he's our leader. HS royalty to all of the werewolves in the United Kingdom. People like me who are in charge of cities will be seen as wolves who simply work for him. He'll be viewed as nothing when he stands next to me in this hall today, and I'm more than okay with that. Maybe after today, we should start looking for the other gods. They need to be reunited after the lunar cycle. Flores adjusted. Maybe not reunited, but aware that each other exist. We don't know how much the other gods know about themselves or if they know more than us. What more could they possibly know? Sam asked. Well, the gods have been brought back for a reason, and that's pretty big unanswered question. Chapter 56. Jacob opened his eyes to see Hunter hovering over him. He had been watched him for almost 10 minutes with plenty of questions floating around in his mind. But the day needed to start off relaxed in order for Jacob to stay calm. Good morning. He smiled. Jake outstretched and yawned. Morning. Instant thoughts of his mum flashed through his head, and it hit his heart hard. What time is it? 9:30. Jacob released a breath, trying to think about something else. His head felt a little cloudy and his emotions were exhausted. He didn't know what or how to feel. Hunter watched him sit up and yawn again. How did you sleep? Fine. I guess. Jacob mumbled quietly. Did you sleep okay? I did. But I was woken up by Sam talking nonsense to William. William's here. Hunter nodded and grabbed his mate's wrist when he attempted to get out of bed. He pulled him into him and wrapped his arms around his bare chest. Where's my morning hug? Jacob's heart was thumping in his chest at feeling Hunter's warm skin against him. It was easier for him to accept his affection rather than running away from his nerves, so he turned and wrapped his arms around his shoulders. Hunter fell back against the duvet with a big grin. Also, where's my morning kiss? Jacob closed his eyes and allowed the blush to swarm his face because Hunter couldn't see it. Is it compulsory? Hunter chuckled and subconsciously ran his fingers gently along his back. Yes. Every morning from now on is compulsory. He felt him smile against his shoulder and really wished he could see it. But what if we're not together? Then I will give you a hug and a kiss when I first see you. Deal. Okay. Hunter pulled his head back and planted a quick kiss onto his lips. Jacob felt fuzzy, but one day, that simple act of affection would feel completely normal because they would have thousands of times. So, today is the last day of this lunar cycle? Sam asked. Scott nodded. He and William had gone home to shower, change and collect the letter. He was incredibly pleased to see that Grace was not there, and he couldn't help but feel He hoped she had gone home to her parents so she was at least in a safe environment when her head was in the right place. Yes, but I've read it through twice now, and I don't understand the last paragraph. Scott turned the pages until he reached the last one. It's about today, but I'm not quite sure what it means. Anthony took the letter and skimmed through it. What does it say? Margot asked. Anthony cleared his throat and made sure he spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. On the last minute of the last hour of the last day, the souls of the immortal beings will unite. A sense of understanding will be fulfilled and the first commission will be shared with the guardians. It is then the gods' duty to carry out their purpose and manage the havoc and regulate the chaos. The power is theirs to rule, command and lead the werewolves to victory. Anthony looked up with raised eyebrows. Well, that made 0 sense. It made perfect sense. Flora chuckled and crossed her arms. Has nobody read the 𝐊𝐢𝐬𝐬? It was supposedly written by the gods. Everyone shook their heads apart from Margot. You used to read that to me when I was little. I never understood it, but the way it was written sounds similar to the last paragraph. What does 𝐿𝐢𝐬𝐬? And Kiri the 𝐊𝐢𝐬𝐬? Flora interrupted Hunter, making him nod. It means something that contains crucial information for maybe a particular subject. And the subject of the book is gods. Scott asked yes. But of course, most wolves didn't believe that it was created by the hands of the gods unless they were faithful believers like myself and my daughter. So what does the paragraph mean then? Hunter asked. Anthony gave it to her and watched her soulful eyes examine the words. Obviously it means that on the last minute of the lunar cycle, which is today, 𝐊𝐢𝐳 will unite with the other gods and you will somehow understand everything. I'm not sure if that means your past, present, or who you are. But then Hunter's role will be to receive these tasks you have to perform because you are not the god of lightning for no reason. However, I'm not sure what this victory is. Maybe a storm too big for you to handle is coming, 𝐊𝐢𝐳. Or maybe something worse. Something worse. William questioned. I'm not sure. Flora shrugged and crossed her frail legs. Let's worry about that when the time comes. Throughout her words, Jacob started frowning with only one question on his mind. Why does it say immortal beings? I thought that would be obvious, my dear. Flora chuckled. You can't be a god and live a human timeline. Hunter's eyes glazed over with surprise. He stared at his grandmother and the hairs on the back of his neck stood up. 𝐻𝐸s immortal. Not just him. They're his mate and his guardian. He can't live without you. I'm going to live forever. Not forever. Just a very, very, very long time. I thought that would be the most obvious part to all of this. And I thought that's what immortal meant. But obvious? Are you kidding? Hunter turned to Jacob, who simply shrugged. I guess. It is obvious, he whispered. Hunter shook his head. I'm gonna let that sink in later. He didn't even want to think about outliving his family. Oh damn it. I can't be late. Anthony suddenly stood up with a sense of urgency. Boys, come with me. The city meeting starts in half an hour. The event had misplaced in everyone's minds, but they all wanted to come and support Jacob. He needed friendly and familiar faces in the crowd, and he needed backup if the news didn't sit well with the werewolf society. You'll be fine. Anthony soothed and placed a gentle hand on Jacob's shoulder. He looked stressed as the big hall was filling up. Anthony had made sure that every wolf in the city turned up today. He told them that he was going to share some incredible news. There are so many people, Jacob whispered. He was stood by the side of the stage and watched his dad and his brother get intense stares because they smelt like humans. Anthony's back stood around them with pride. Jacob and his family are very important. They are a tough crowd to please, but I'm more than sure you can shut them up. Margot sat in her seat on the stage and the crowd began to settle. The echoed chat subsided when Anthony stepped up and walked into the middle. His eyes scanned the many faces and prayed that the news about his son having a male mate would be accepted. Good afternoon, wolves. He projected his voice to the back of the room and hoped the people were not too crammed in. He received a murmur of greetings in response before continuing. I hope you've had a great weekend. I'm very glad to see you've noticed my urgent response to visiting this week's meeting. Alpha. A voice rose from the crowd. Why are there humans here? They are family members of my son's mate. Excited talk suddenly rose. This was new news to almost everyone in the huge room. Anthony turned to see Hunter watching cautiously until he motioned for him and his mate to come over. Jacob was stuck to his spot, but Hunter held his hand and pulled him onto the stage. They walked over, and almost instantly, the talking stopped and eyes widened. Jacob was squeezing Hunter's hand so hard that it was almost hurting him. Wolves, this is Jacob Jones, Hunter's mate. Anthony and Margot held their breaths and watched, intensely looking for those heavy eyes of judgment. Time felt like it stopped and the reactions seemed to take a very long time to happen. Hunter bit his tongue to stop himself from squeezing Jacob's hand back, knowing he would definitely hurt him. He has never seen so many people this silent. When it became a little awkward, Hunter's and Anthony's pack started clapping and cheering for him, which fueled everyone else. Even though it was slow, other wolves started showing their happiness for the new couple and clapped too. Eventually, the hall erupted with celebrations for the alpha's son and his mate. Anthony was not even going to mention that his son is gay. It's pretty obvious and it doesn't need explaining because nobody should care. All right, settle down. Settle down. He grinned. He was very happy with the response. Now, this is not the important news that I have to tell you. Are you okay? Hunter thought and attempted to move his fingers, but Jacob was locking them between his. He didn't respond. He was frozen on the spot with hundreds of eyes watching him. Can I have a raise of hands from everyone who believes in the gods? Less than half of the wolves in the room raised their hands with confusion but pride. Okay, so, For everyone here who do not believe, I was one of you two. I didn't think that there were once beings of a higher authority looking after our kind and keeping everything in order, but that is until I was faced with proof. The hall went deadly silent while Anthony stepped over to Jacob and placed a hand on his shoulder. Wolves, after today, the gods will be officially reincarnated, and a sudden uproar exploded in the hall and all the non-believers started yelling at Anthony. What are you talking about? Someone yelled. You've gone crazy. That's madness. You can prove nothing. It's lies. Be quiet. Anthony roared, but everyone was so worked up that they stopped listening and started yelling their opinions. The gods have never been real. Jacob and Hunter looked at each other, knowing the only way to prove it was to show them so they could witness it with their own eyes. Scott and William could only hear the people who don't believe as they started arguing with the believers. It was quickly turning into chaos, and nobody thought it would spiral out of control so fast. They didn't realize it would be such a big subject. People were so against something they believed that they thought it was okay to force their opinions onto other werewolves. Anthony looked at his wife with questioning eyes until the mayhem suddenly started to quiet down. It was like a wave spread through the crowd and silenced their angry and confused discussions. Anthony turned when a warm yellow glow caught his eye. Jacob was stood on the stage in front of all these people with his palm facing the ceiling. His eyes focused on the small collection of lightning bolts quiggling and twisting in his hand. With no words, Jacob had managed to silence almost 1,000 people by showing them who he really is. Anthony took the opportunity to speak again. This is 𝐊𝐤𝐽, the god of lightning. Jacob allowed the lightning to fuel in his other hand, making Hunter look down when he felt the cool spark stroke his skin. Suddenly, Anthony's back lowered to one knee and dropped their heads with respect. Hunter's pack quickly copied their actions. Sam pulled William down onto one knee, who then pulled Scott down too. No, don't. Jacob stopped when the believers quickly bowed down to him, and it started spreading through the rest of the wolves. Hunter, don't let them do that. He thought, why not? Hunter thought back with a smile. You're either God. It's only respectful to bow to their leader. Chapter 57. Jacob never thought he would be awkwardly standing in a hall full of werewolves as they bowed onto one knee because he was their leader. He never thought he would be in this situation 2 weeks ago. To him, werewolves used to be just fiction and made up purely for human entertainment. It made him wonder what else was real. Vampires, angels, demons. He pushed those thoughts to the back of his mind. Of course, they were not real. Hunter felt the pride shoot through him. He was standing in front of his father's city of wolves, tightly clinging onto his mate who just happened to be a werewolf god. He wanted to kiss him and mark him as his. He was feeling very territorial over him with so many worshipping eyes staring. Now Anthony boomed. Can I have a raise of hands from the wolves who believe in the gods? Scott turned and looked behind him. He watched as everyone in the room raised their hands in awe of his son. He felt content and fulfilled. His dad would be very proud, and he knew he was watching from whatever peaceful place his soul was resting in. The electricity was still wrapping around Jacob's hands because it comforted him, and he needed it when he felt This information is no secret. Tell your friends and your families from other cities. 𝐊𝐤𝐽 is the only god in the United Kingdom, and the word needs to spread. If they want to visit and see for themselves, tell them they are more than welcome. Anthony linked his fingers together and breathed a sigh of relief. He had been nervous to announce this, and his chest felt much lighter now. Can we go? Jacob thought. Of course we can. Hunter turned and started walking with him off the stage. Anthony wanted to make sure that the werewolves knew 𝐊𝐤𝐽 was the true leader instead of him, but it was too much responsibility at this stage. They'd have to ease him into the role, and he was more than sure that Jacob is an awful public speaker. Okay, wolves. Thank you for turning up today, even though you're supposed to. He mumbled. But remember, tell everyone you know about 𝐊𝐤𝐽 and you'll do the same. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday, and I'll see you on Wednesday for another meeting where you can bring any questions you may have for my son's mate to answer. The crowd quickly started yelling their questions, but Anthony took Argo's hand and they followed the boys. Anthony ordered his pack to make sure everyone left instead of following them. Jacob didn't need to get too overwhelmed. Sam, thank you for fixing the steps. My son is so useless. Anthony put his weight on the steps outside his home and nodded with gratitude that they were stable enough to hold him. Excuse me. I'm standing right next to you. Hunter crossed his arms with a frown and Sam tried so hard not to smirk when his alpha glared at him. I'm a guardian of a god. Show me respect. Anthony scoffed. Shut your mouth, boy. He playfully smacked him on the side of the head. Why can't you be like Jacob? Humble and quiet. And why can't you be like Scott? A good dad. Anthony smacked him again. Do you want to be grounded? They watched each other before Anthony grinned and pulled him into a headlock. Hunter pushed him to the ground and they started to play fight. Jacob was walking over to his mate, but stopped when he was on the floor, getting pinned down by his dad. He quickly turned and marched the opposite way, not wanting to be part of that. Jacob, Ricky said, getting his attention. He turned to see Hunter's pack standing with Anthony's pack. Are you free to talk for a bit? Jacob instantly pulled his sleeves over his hands and hesitantly shuffled over. Anth and Stack introduced themselves with big smiles. They knew a lot about Jacob because their alpha has told them everything. The fact that he was very shy and timid was not hard to figure out. He was fidgeting with his covered hands and avoided eye contact like it would kill him. How do you feel after the announcement? Ray from Anthony's back asked. He had brown curly hair, varied and skin and wise eyes. Jacob could tell that he was the beta wolf of Anthony's back. He was sure how he knew that, but he had the same calming but protective aura as Sam. Jacob completely lost his words. He was always so focused on what people were thinking about him that he neglected to think for himself. I bet it was overwhelming for you. Ray smiled, not wanting him to feel awkward. Gosh, I can't believe I'm talking to a god. Jacob chewed his lip and wished he had the courage to speak up for himself. It was going to take him a very long time to realize that he was the inspiration for many wolves. He still felt a little singled out because he was new to this way of life. It is an honor to know you, 𝐿𝐤𝐻𝐿. Just call me Jacob. Are you sure? We know it's the name you're used to, but it's not who you truly are. He hasn't really thought about it. Jacob was a cover name. It was a mask to hide his true identity, and it angered him that his mother was annoyed with his father for calling him 𝐿𝐤𝐻𝐿 because she didn't want him to be part of this wonderful wolf world. Call me 𝐿𝐤𝐻𝐿. Hunter's pack smiled wide and nodded with respect. Yes, your highness. Jacob turned when he heard a familiar deep voice. It brushed his ears like velvet. Hunter was standing behind him with a cheeky twinkle in his eyes, grass stains on his jeans, and ruffled hair. Would you like to get used to this teleportation stuff? We have 6 hours before midnight. Jacob nodded and allowed him to take his hand. As always, he melted a little bit inside. How can something as simple as physical touch manipulate his senses so strongly? His pack and Anthony's back watched them walk away. They secretly idle 𝐿𝐤𝐻𝐿. The atmosphere around him was intense and powerful. I'm excited to see what happens tonight. You'll officially be a full god when today is over. Hunter smiled. I'm a bit nervous. Jacob mumbled and looked up to the sky, feeling the comforts of the clouds. There's nothing to worry about, really. Well, I'll be here with you. Hunter stopped and turned. I'm going to walk into the middle of the field. See if you can teleport to me. Jacob nodded and watched him begin to walk away. The grass crunched under his feet while he shielded his eyes from the setting sun. It had been a warm day, and after the meeting, they came straight home and Hunter made Jacob some food to help him calm down. He gets hungry when he is stressed and often eats until it goes away. If it wasn't for his godly body, he would surely be chubby. Hunter needed to go for a run tomorrow. Unfortunately for him, he does not have a body that will allow that much food without changing. He also didn't want to lose his muscle definition. When he reached the middle of the field, he turned and faced his beautiful mate. Ready, Jacob faced his direction, took a breath and really focused. It was hard to explain how he felt when the transition took place. It would take him a matter of seconds to be somewhere different. It really disoriented him when he blinked and was right in front of Hunter. Wow. That's gonna take some getting used to. Hunter chuckled. I don't know if I like it. I think you'll eventually find it useful, but right now, there's no rush to get used to it. Jacob sighed and looked down to his feet. What's wrong? I just keep thinking about Mom. Hunter rested a hand on his shoulder and softly cupped his chin. Don't give her the satisfaction of being upset. I know it's normal to feel that way, but things will sort itself out with time. Your mom doesn't deserve any of this sadness. Hunter smiled that dazzling smile. Nathan isn't coming over today because he said you had too much to think about with the lunar cycle and HES, right? That should be the only thing you're focusing on. Jacob knew he needed to push his troubles to the side until he had time to think about them. It would be harder for the lunar cycle to complete itself if he wasn't in the right frame of mind. You have 5 minutes, Scott said and squeezed his son's shoulder. The end of the lunar cycle was so close and nobody really knew what to expect. They were all sitting outside in the field because Margot didn't want Jacob to accidentally burn the house down if anything big happened with his electricity. This is a natural process for you. Don't be nervous. Hunter could feel his anxieties pulsing through him. There wasn't much he could help with because this is going to happen whether he likes it or not. Can you feel anything yet? Jacob shook his head and pulled at the grass. He was avoiding every honest eyes, even his dad's. He just wanted to focus on staying calm. His heart was beating fast. His palms were sweaty and, of course, he was overthinking everything. How could he mentally prepare himself for something this big? He then looked up when the ringing started in his ears. The static noise hovered behind Hunter's conscious thoughts, making it hard to concentrate. The clouds were visible, even in the dull night sky. But even though the sky was full, the moonlight shone and exposed everyone. It was a full moon and all the werewolves could feel its power. Hunter's eyes were incredibly dilated due to his excited wolf traits being right on the surface. However, he managed to keep them down because his mate was more important. Jacob's senses were getting sharper while the static noise grew louder. He watched the clouds and heard a faint rumble of thunder, but he was the only one who heard it. He knew it was whispering to him, waiting, watching, and preparing itself for the right moment. He thought about the other gods and wondered if they were going through the exact same thing. If they were from all over the world, how could they experience it at the same time? Not everyone could see the full moon. Maybe they didn't mean to see it. Maybe all they needed was the end of the lunar cycle. You have 1 minute. Scott's eyes were alert and William looked tense. They were worried. Jacob was obviously very nervous. Who wouldn't be? He then stood up when his whole body tingled. The sky was calling him and he could not disobey. It was beginning to be a part of him as it stole his full concentration. When he started walking into the darkness, Scott wanted to follow, but Hunter stopped him. Don't. His mind is somewhere else. HES connecting with the storm. Jacob stopped around 20 meters away from where they were sitting. He was hard to see and impossible to spot through human eyes. The lights from the house made it easy to see people who were close, but the field turned a deeper shade of black. 10 seconds. Anthony's eyes were staring, as were everyone else's. Hunter was holding his breath. He could feel something and understood that his mate was ready. Jacob was afraid as he stood in a silent, pitch-black field. He could hear nothing but the wind, whistling through the trees while he closed his eyes. Now it was time. Chapter 58. Scott squinted his eyes, trying to see his son in the darkness, but he couldn't even see an outline. William couldn't see his brother, and his concern grew. It was his duty as an older brother to look out for him and make sure everything was okay. However, tonight, he was completely helpless and out of his depth when their surrounding became eerily quiet. The atmosphere quickly turned incredibly thick. All of a sudden, a magnificently big electricity bolt hurled itself from the sky and landed straight onto Jacob. The entire field lit up with the creamy yellow glow of the bolt and exposed Jacob to those who could not see him. His eyes were closed and his body was completely submerged within the electricity. It was twisting and turning around him and conditioning his godly body, mind and soul. Jacob has never felt more relaxed in his life. His skin felt the smooth, cold texture of his power, but his mind was very distant. It had been pulled into the storm and he could only concentrate on what was in his head. So far, it was empty and waiting to be filled. Wow, Scott breathed and stared with wide eyes and an open mouth. The crackling of the storm swelled in every owner's ears. Hunter had a small but calm smile on his face. Maybe it was due to them having a bond that was currently being invaded. Jacob clenched his hands into fists as the electricity pulsed through his veins and dominated his heart. It was strong yet keeping him stable. He was breathing deeply when a lot of unfamiliar voices filled his head and made it almost impossible to hear anything else. He knew who the voices were. He could detect every single one of them as the other gods. They have connected, just like the letter said would happen. They were all thinking about each other and the lunar cycle while their individual powers strengthened them and completed the transformation. Jacob started to understand the world more. His intelligence was catapulting through his brain. He understood that his duty was to focus on the sky and allow the transitioning of the seasons to stay smooth. He would be in control of day and night, making sure everything worked like clockwork. He was growing wise, spiritual, compassionate, pure and filling up with empathy. Everything about the world made sense and he could detect his place in the universe. It was not just on Earth. His mind lives in the atmosphere that connects this world to others and keeps the gateway open to heaven and hell. He was in control. He was powerful. He was robust. He was compelling and he was a leader. All of a sudden, he felt himself change into a wolf. Everyone gasped when he turned into the biggest white wolf anyone had ever laid eyes on. His head would be the same height as Hunter's chest, making his own wolf look a lot smaller. The silver in Jacob's fur was very vibrant, while the electricity continued to surround him. His paws were huge and he looked very muscular. Even as a wolf, his ears were still floppy, but no werewolf would be a threat to his sharp teeth and claws. The witnesses watched him raise his head and his mouth was perfectly in line with the full moon as it was just above him in the sky. Jacob's claws dug into the grass and a loud, deep howl burst from within. Hunter's hair stood on end when his mate cried into the moonlight. His beautiful hypnotic howl was heard for many miles, instantly waking any werewolves who were in the range of this captivating sound. His wolf could now transform depending on his mood. His shy and timid personality would portray a puppy. His angry or moody emotions would trigger a wolf the same size as Hunter, and his godly form would convert into the creation, sitting before them. After 30 seconds, the howl subsided and Jacob changed back into his godly form. For the first time, his 𝐶 tripped and left his bare chest glowing against the lightning. While the transformation came to an end, the power decided that it was time for every wolf in the United Kingdom to know he was here and ready. A static noise filled every owner's ears apart from William and Scott. Anthony covered his ears and scrunched his eyes shut. Just like every wolf in the country, I am 𝐊𝐤𝐳, a god of the wolves and the keeper of lightning. I am your leader. You will bow down to me. His voice was loud and even Hunter found himself respectfully bowing to his mate. Jacob didn't choose those words. They came without command. My mate and my guardian is Hunter 𝐊𝐳. Respect his presence. Pack and family, we are in charge. Do not disobey my words, for I am your god. As soon as his voice stopped, the static noise left every owner's head, but 𝐊𝐤𝐻's presence was in the sky, all over the country. Every werewolf now understood that he had arrived, and he was very, very real. Suddenly, the electricity forced its way into Jacob's palms where it belonged. He gasped and fell back from its force while the moon was covered by heavy clouds, indicating that the lunar cycle was successful and over. The field was dark once more and everyone was left startled and shocked. What an astounding thing to witness. Hunter scrambled to his feet and ran over to Jacob, who had a hand on his chest, trying to slow down his fast heartbeat. He crouched in front of him and held his shoulders. Hey, he said softly and pulled him close. Are you okay? Jacob looked into his eyes, feeling very, very different. He nodded and allowed him to help him to his feet. I'm a god, he breathed. Hunter grinned when he saw a different twinkle in his eye. He was much more dominant now, yet he would never show it and Hunter would never admit it. Everyone else walked over and Margot was overwhelmed by his aura. It was magnificently tough and mighty, just as presence oozed leadership, authoritative and influential qualities. I can't get my head around what I just saw. Dot said and ran a hand through his hair. How do you feel, son? Different. Jacob could feel the other gods within him, and they were somehow all combined. He didn't want to say that he felt incredibly superior, but that is the only way he could describe it. What he feels, thinks, and can do is no match for anyone else. However, Jacob is humble and passive. He didn't like to think of himself as more important. He wanted to blend in with everyone else, but that would never, ever happen. When Hunter yawned, he just started to feel a little worn out. It was now after midnight and everyone was beginning to look a little rough. I think, I want to go to bed. When he turned and started walking towards the house. If that was him, he would be full of excitement and want to talk every owner's ears off about what just happened. But Flora shushed him when her grandson followed. He needs his rest. I'm sure he'll be willing to talk about it tomorrow. Hunter followed Jacob through to his bedroom. He watched him climb into bed without even changing his jeans or putting a T-shirt on. He laid on his back and watched the ceiling with a distant stare. Is this all a bit too much for you? Hunter questioned and shut the door. He climbed on the bed next to him, wondering when the first task will be given to him. The letter said he'd receive it at some point. It's not too much, Jacob whispered. I just need to get used to it. Hunter lay down next to him, but his eyes stayed glued to his. I understand. Jacob started to fiddle with his hands and a question was making its way up his throat. See, can you hug me until I fall asleep? His voice was barely above a whisper and his heart thumped. He watched Hunter grin wide and snuggle close. His warmth and irresistible scent filled him with comfort and pleasure. He turned and buried his head into his shoulder as they coiled their arms around each other. Sleep well, Hunter whispered in his ear. His eyelids were closed and heavy. He didn't want to go to sleep, but his body really needed it. When 7:30 rolled around on the clock, Anthony knocked loudly on the boys' bedroom door. He had talked with Scott about what to do today, and they both had received phone calls from college to tell them their sons were skipping too many classes. They were not sure if they wanted them to continue with their education. Not when there are bigger things for them to concentrate on. But maybe a normal day for Jacob is just what he needs. Boys, get up. It's a college day, Anthony yelled through the door. Hunter woke up with his face pressed into the side of Jacob's. His arms were around him, holding him tight. Jacob had been awake for about half an hour and he could not bring himself to move. He loved the feel of Hunter's embrace. He felt very safe. Morning, he whispered when he pulled his head back. Hunter rubbed his tired eyes and stretched. He mumbled a response, not wanting to get up until he remembered what happened last night. Your wolf is amazing, he murmured. It's better than yours. Hunter opened his eyes and stared at Jacob. You're such a liar. Jacob's chocolate brown eyes twinkled in the morning sunlight. He sat up and took a calming breath. He started to climb out of bed, but Hunter grabbed him and pulled him close. Where's my morning hug and kiss? Jacob's lips curled into a tiny smile as he hugged back. They rested their foreheads together and watched each other's lips. Hunter licked his because they were a bit dry, however. It sent a shiver of pleasure through Jacob, and that was his intention. They both moved their heads in close and kissed. Jacob was getting more comfortable and he was kissing with more ease. Hunter liked feeling him relaxed and not tense when they were so close. He really wanted to take it further, but they did need to get up for college. Jacob pulled back with a nervous question. Later, can you? He knew what he wanted to ask, but he didn't really want to say it out loud. Although, Hunter knew exactly what he was going to say. The best way to get used to kissing is by practicing. I told you. My lips are always available. Jacob blushed, just as the bedroom door opened. Boys, get up. We're going in 20 minutes, Margot said loudly. She had so many questions for Jacob, but he needed to get used to this change before he could answer things about himself. Fine. Hunter groaned and allowed his mate to climb out of bed when Scott popped his head into the room. They'll pick you boys up after college because we're going back to my house and inviting Nathan over to sort this mess out. Your mother won't be there, but we can have a barbecue and spend some time in the pool. Sound good? Jacob nodded. He knew everyone was desperate to talk about last night. and he was grateful that they restricted themselves. Like right now. He knew what the weather would be like all day here. He knew what the weather would be like 300 miles away. He knew the exact time the sun would set, and he knew it was only 2 weeks and 3 days into summer because feel it. The sky was telling him what it was doing, and he listened without even knowing it. Hunter sat up with a tiny frown. The thought of relaxing in the pool would be bliss for most teenagers on a hot day. But not for him. He had a huge fear of water and found himself dreading the idea. It was the fact that he couldn't swim and refused to learn. It was who he had lost to the waves and what he has experienced. Just the thought of being near its end horrid shivers right through him. He didn't even want to think about his loved ones being surrounded by water. He would surely freak out if Jacob set one foot in the pool. Margot knew exactly what he was thinking about, and her heart broke. Maybe it was time to talk about the past and let some troubling and haunting memories finally be sent to rest.